Today on the WEInvested podcast, we have with us Jonathan DeYoe, and he is the founder and CEO of Mindful Money, a financial planning firm. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Wesley. I'm excited for the conversation. How are you?
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm doing amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, we're definitely here to talk about mindful money. But before we get into that, let's just start from the top, from the very, very beginning. So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Nice, nice.
You been?
Never been to South Dakota before, but I've had a few people on the podcast from South Dakota.
No kidding. That's
Yes,
interesting.
sir.
Not many. There's not many of us that left. So yeah, it's strange to hear you haven't talked to other people.
Yes, sir. So how was that migration from South Dakota to Berkeley, California?
Well, so I grew up in Rapid City, South Dakota. I actually went to Montana State University in Bozeman, Montana, in between there. And while I was there, I shifted my major from finance to philosophy and religious studies. And so two of my professors actually said, "Hey, Jonathan, you obviously like this stuff. Why don't you go to grad school in this?" And I looked at Columbia, and I looked at Graduate Theological Union. I looked at Cornell, and I got into Cornell and the Graduate Theological Union. But I chose to come to Berkeley for the GTU, Graduate Theological Union, and I studied at the Institute of Buddhist Studies for 3 years, and that's what brought me to California. And once you're here, I mean, the people are awesome. The food is, I mean, this is food culture, and I'm fond of really good food, so it's just tough to leave once you're here.
Yes, sir. That's awesome. And those are all great schools. So how do you like California? How is that lifestyle different than, South Dakota?
Well, the biggest difference is cost of living.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Cost of living is a little bit out of control here, and I look at, I love looking at real estate, so I'm constantly looking at, what's a house cost in Rapid City, South Dakota. You can get, 4-bedroom, 2-car garage, big plot of land for 200 grand in Rapid City, South Dakota. Maybe you can also find one for $1 million, right? But you can't find anything for less than probably 750 in the Bay Area, and that's tiny, no garage, probably a condo. Like it's expensive here for sure. But when I grew up with very little, and so I knew growing up that I was going to find a place where I could build something, where I could be successful, but also just be secure. Like I really wanted security when I grew up. And so, I've been in this industry trying to help other people get security and try to help other people understand their financial plans and understand money. But in that process, I helped a lot of other people, and that's actually helped me build a security as well. And so once you're here and your clients are all around you in the Bay Area, you can't go back to South Dakota because you're serving people that are here. And that's, you got to see eyeball to eyeball here.
Yes, sir, for sure. And before we get into mindful money, I just want to say that you have an awesome library behind you. And it looks amazing. And out of the library that you have behind you, are there any books that stand out to you or that are the most memorable that you've read?
So it's a great question. I've been on many interviews. No one ever asked questions about the library, and I really, really appreciate the question. So in the back on this side, those are all Buddhist books. Those are all like Tibetan, Japanese Buddhist books. And on that side, the book that stands out the most for me, it's called The Words of My Perfect Teacher. It's by Patrul Rinpoche. It's a great book. It starts off with this great blessing that is being born a human. You have the opportunity to practice, you have the opportunity to learn, you have the opportunity to excel and become. Whereas if you're born an invertebrate, or even a dog or a cat, it's kind of instinctive. You're not really learning, you're not really becoming. It's really what you are is what you are, right? On this side, we have a lot of business books, a lot of biographies, a lot of books of speeches, these kinds of things. And one of my favorite authors over there in this, I've got like 5 of his books, is Stephen Pressfield. And Stephen Pressfield writes a book called The War of Art. And it talks about how someone who wants to be a writer or an artist deals with the blocks to getting the work done. If you're not, there's people that get up in the morning and go to work for 8-10 hours, they clock out and they come home, right? if you're producing content or producing art, you don't have that bookend. You gotta actually sit down and force yourself and create the motivation to do the work. And he talks about how to get those blocks out of the way so that you can do the work. And I think that's been, I mean, his book was instrumental in me finishing my book, Mindful Money.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And your background sounds so interesting to me. And not to get too deep into religion or anything, but um, I like to study theology and different religions. So, what are some of the biggest lessons that jump out to you uh from, Buddhism?
Wow. Well, there's a lot, right? And most of these religions have some kind of an ethical background to them, and I'd say Buddhism is no different in that regard. There's a right way to be wealthy. There's a right way, and I won't say to be wealthy. There's something called an eightfold path. One of the eightfold is right livelihood, and it talks about some of the ways you can earn money, and it doesn't talk about investing. It doesn't talk about wealth, but just talks about being a good person with money. So that's important. Probably the biggest lesson, or one of those important lessons in Buddhism specifically, is the lesson of impermanence. It's the expectation that every moment, every experience, everything that you own, every person that touches your life, you yourself are impermanent. And it doesn't, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but about 4 months ago, my brother died. And so I'm very aware of this concept of impermanence. And then you get struck with something that is traumatic and is just destructive, and you're reminded of it, and being able to draw on this, oh, I do remember this lesson about impermanence. I do remember that this is actually how things function, that this is normal. Doesn't take the pain away, but it can soften the edge a little bit. And we get on social media. There's so many people and so many opportunities to get sucked into stuff. But if you recognize that it's all not permanent, it's all stuff that fades away. Really, the stuff that matters is the stuff that you love, that are important to you, and you can focus on those things, and you can literally start ignoring all the rest, and you'll have a better life. You'll be happier. You have more well-being. You'll be able to give back more. You'll be more financially successful. Everything is built on this. And that starts with this idea of knowing, and this is something that Steve Jobs talked about, right? Knowing that you're about to die, knowing that you're not guaranteed tomorrow. Why would you squander a day if you knew that this was a possibility? And that's just a reminder.
Yes, sir, for sure. And that's, awesome, because I oftentimes tell myself, everything is temporary. Every situation, whatever you're going through is usually temporary. And it's pretty cool. Well, it's all temporary, but it's pretty cool that you mentioned Steve Jobs, because a couple nights ago I was just watching the Jobs movie on Amazon Prime with Ashton Kutcher. So, it's pretty cool that you mentioned that. And then another thing I want to say is that, you have some amazing credentials, but I feel like a really humble vibe, like a humble spirit. So that's something that I definitely appreciate. Um, but let's just kind of jump into it. What is mindful money?
So that mindful money is a contraction, right? There's mindful and there's money. And so what the real question is, we know what money is. So what is this thing called mindfulness? Mindfulness is a non-judgmental awareness of the present moment. And if you think about 99% of all media, 99% of all moments of fear and greed are really tied to judging the moment. What is right? What is wrong? What is good? What is bad about the present moment? And let's just put it in context. Right now, there's a lot of talk about, the Fed's going to raise rates or not. The Fed's going to start tapering or not. And there's a lot of talk about whether or not Powell is going to get the next term or not. And there's a lot of talk about budgets and whether they're going to be 3.5 trillion or 1.85 trillion, or whether the tax is going to be on capital gains, deferred capital gains, or whether it's going to be on income, and how they're going to pick all of these things. Every line in print is a judgment. And it's interesting because people make financial decisions in the middle of judgments they don't even realize are judgments about expectations about the future, judgments about what's good and bad in their lives. And I've done this when I've been doing public speaking, I'll stand up in a room of people, 100 people in the room. How many people have actually done the analysis, have looked at the trade-offs they need to make in order to reach their top 3 priorities in life? And what are those? Retirement income you can't outlive, taking care of your kids, making sure they get good educations, maybe helping your parents out as they're aging, right? Those are the 3 things that come up more than anything else. How many people have actually looked at these things? Very few. I mean, you're in the industry as well. Not many people do the math. They don't do the plan. Well, if you don't do the plan, why are you judging what the headlines say? If you don't know what the trade-offs need to be to get from here to there, you're stuck in this constant judgment of what's going on right now, right now, right now. And you know what? You're never going to get closer to the things that make you happy and give you well-being if you're constantly stuck in this mire. So mindful money, it's a stance around money that starts with understanding. And this is actually our sort of tagline, right? Stop predicting, start planning, stay mindful. And if you can stop predicting, stop looking at what the world says is going to happen, start planning, actually understand your trade-offs, and then you stay mindful of all those things that drag you into the conversation that's not going to be helpful to you. The conversation about tapering and the spending plan that Biden has in place and what's the taxes going to be around that, it almost doesn't matter in terms of your long-term financial success. It might matter for a week or a month or the next 6 months, but we're talking about 50, 100 years. Like no one's going to remember the changes to the tax code 50 years from now. They're not going to know unless they look it up and they check it out. Right now, you can look up what the tax rates were 50 years ago and you can find those things, but it doesn't affect your life now. Like it doesn't have no bearing at all. So mindfulness is being aware of the limitations of this knowledge, being aware of the things you have control of, being aware of what actually makes you happy and brings well-being.
Yes, sir. I mean, and that's an amazing way to look at money because money is so, analytical or, uh, it's just so, I guess, strategic. But you're looking at it from a mindful standpoint, kind of like you're looking at it from, you're looking at the psychology of money. So I think that's a really interesting viewpoint or perspective, to have on your money and kind of how it affects your life and your well-being. Um, but how would you say that you got started in this space?
Well, so there's the beginning in the industry, and then there's the consolidation or the addition of the mindfulness aspect. So the beginning of the industry came. This was 1996. So I'm a student at the Graduate Theological Union. I'm working on my thesis. My thesis was on Tibetan phenomenology, which is sort of like Tibetan philosophy around how the stimulus we get from the outside world creates our picture of the world. How do we come to perceive the world? And my wife at the time, my first wife, said, "Okay, Jonathan, this has been a lot of fun, me working, putting you through school. How about you work and put me through school?" And so I was like, you know what, that seems fair. So I started working, and I dropped out of a Buddhist studies program, and I have a degree in philosophy. So there's not a lot of jobs for that particular skill set. So I went to Dean Witter, and Dean Witter hired me, and I spent the first 5 years at literally 7 different Wall Street firms, 4 mergers and 3 choices on my part. And then ultimately in 2001, I decided to set up my own firm. And it wasn't until 2007, 2008, where conversations with clients around the Great Recession led me to say, you know what? I had a conversation with a client, and lovely conversation, lovely woman. And we were talking about doing an IRA contribution or retirement plan contribution. And this was, I think it was like March, April 2009. So 2007, 2008, horrible years in markets. 2009 started out as a really bad time in markets. And it led, people to say things like capitalism is over. And so while headlines were saying capitalism is over, investing will never be the same, my client was like, okay, I have this money I'm supposed to contribute. What do I do with it? And I said, well, you contribute it. Like, that's what your plan said. That's what we built in. And she said, well, I'm a little nervous that this is going to keep going down. Markets were already down 50 something percent. She was terrified, understandably so. That's what the headlines were telling her to be. Um, and so I just kind of talked about how we can't really know what's coming in the future. We can make some assumptions, but even if we make those assumptions, we don't really know how the market's going to react to those things. And so the mindfulness of our limitation of what we can know about the future and the mindfulness of the limitation of how we might know the market would respond, those two things tell us that the best time to invest is when you have money. The best time to withdraw is when you need money, because you can't predict. You cannot predict. And she said, Jonathan, that's a great story. I love it. I'm going to definitely put this money to work. By the way, if you ever want to write a book, I'll write your forward. And so that was the stimulant to actually put the mindfulness and the money together in my book.
No, that's amazing, man. And you know, something that I really picked up on is just like you have a common energy, like a common presence, in a way to kind of talk sense into people, and to bring that calmness back to them. You know, even with the media saying one thing, or I guess kind of putting out scare tactics to people, but you have a way of just calming them down and bringing them back to reality. And then, you know, doing my research, I also noticed that you are a public speaker. So, you know, a public speaker as well as an author. So how do you think, you know, being a public speaker and your background has helped to benefit your business and in, you know, enhancing your conversations with clients?
I mean, that's a great question. So so there's lots of different elements to our business, more so today than there was 5 years ago. So I actually became a public speaker. You know, I've done a lot of public speaking, different conferences and different things, but never a paid public speaker, never part of it as a career path, right? It's always been as somebody interested in changing the conversation around money and kind of having an effect in the industry. That's kind of where my public speaking has been in the past. In 2020, you know, the world shut down, and Berkeley was one of the first places to shut down. And so when we shut down, the thing that I started doing was building courses. And there's all kinds of course platforms, and there's all kinds of methods, and thinking about it, lots of them are free. And so we built two sets of courses. One was financial literacy, basic financial literacy, 18 modules. You know, how do I read my credit report? You know, how do I pick an insurance? How do I pick a bank? You know, what's the difference between credit and debit? I mean, very basic financial literacy. And the second course we built was actually based on my book. And so at the end of the second course, you end up with a financial plan. You end up understanding your trade-offs. You end up, you know, a do-it-yourself financial plan through a course. The cheapest way to get to that is to read the book and do the exercises. I just hold people's hand through the exercises in the course itself. So the way the public, getting to your question, the way the public speaking helps the business now is it leads people to, and we'll call it the top of the funnel, which is just an educational course or a financial literacy course or a DIY financial plan. And my goal is actually to provide that support for anyone that needs that. You know, we give away both financial literacy and the financial planning guidance for free to any groups that want to have access to it for their people. You've got a church, you got a youth group, you got you know, a group of athletes. There's a group of Special Olympics athletes in the upper Midwest that have gone through the courses. The teachers and staff, faculty and staff at my kids' schools have all gone through the courses. There's the Black Student Union at Berkeley Public High School has gone through the courses. So there's a lot of people. We just give it away to anyone that wants it. What that does for me and for the business and for what I want to do in terms of an impact on the industry is it focuses on the two things that I think are the most important. And I think that the problem that we face just as human beings with finance is there's no formal education anywhere. You know, welcome to college. Hey, here's your diploma. Here's your first job. Good luck with your 401k and all the insurance choices in your healthcare. You've never seen these forms before. Maybe your mom and dad have. Maybe you can have a conversation with them about it. Probably not. Like, there's no formal education, nothing practical about money ever. So education is key. Got to give people that education. But that's not enough. You have to actually help people create a financial plan and understand the trade-offs. Understand how choosing X affects Y and Z. How spending money today affects your long-term. How, if you want to be on the, and I don't, you know, this is not a conversation about inequality, But if you want to have assets and build assets, the only way to do that is to save and invest. And so earmarking some of your funds to save and invest. Well, how do I do that? Well, here's a process, here's a method of doing it. And by doing that, by providing these things for free in my community, we've become known as the education firm. We're the firm that provides education to clients and clients' kids. We're the firm that provides, in our community, all this stuff that no one else has given them. So that's awesome. It changes the conversation. It provides what's important as a baseline.
Yes, sir. And I think that's like a very important um, thing to be able to provide to people today, a very important service, because we have so much information available to us, but it's knowing how to actually format that information and make it so it's palatable for the people to receive and understand and actually utilize and put it to work.
Yeah. And by the way, if you go through this and you're like, you know what, I get it, this is really good information, I want help. We're there. Like we're there to help. And that's how business grows. We give a ton of stuff away for free. Some people love it and say, hey, I'd like to go a little deeper with you. Great. Fantastic. Otherwise, just use it for free. I'm happy to offer it.
Yes, sir. That's amazing. And I guess so my next question is, what are some of the things that are always things in personal finance?
You know what? There's two. And there's two I talk about all the time. The first is kind of the iron wire. This is the most important thing. This enables all the other things. And that is, you have to spend less than you make, period. That is the only way this works. And if that means that you have to, rent a room in a house instead of renting an apartment, if that means you have to, if you have a house and you can't make ends meet, but you have to rent out a bedroom in that house to make ends meet, if that means, the only way this works is that you have to be saving, right? You have to be saving. And so that leaves out, and this is the real challenge, that leaves out roughly half of our culture, the American culture. And so we have to find a way for those people to boost their savings, which means give them ways to develop skills so they can get better jobs, give them supports so that they can, take care of their business at home. They've got kids at home they can't work because all of these things are issues. We're trying to solve all these things right now as a country, which is great. But that's the first thing. You gotta spend less than you make. The second thing is, for some portion of that difference, the amount that you're saving, you have to own equity. It can't be a savings account. It can be equity in real estate. It can be equity in private businesses. It can be equities, shares in the great companies of the United States and the world. But it is the equity alone, in business specifically, that will allow you to harness the innovation and productivity of the human race. Real estate equity is great, but you're basically betting on the local work environment. You're betting on the job status of your local environment. If jobs go away, or if industry closes up, then your rents are going to go down, right? And that's great. Some places are great. That's fine. And I own real estate, so I'm not dogging real estate. But to get the innovation and productivity of the human race, you have to own businesses, private or public, I don't care, but you have to own businesses. A great way to do that is actually own your own business, is to really invest in your own practice, side hustle, whatever you can do and there's so many opportunities to do that right now. And you Google, side hustle, you'll find 50 potential jobs that you can do from your home that'll give you a little bit of extra money on a weekly basis.
Yes, sir. And I definitely think those are some vital pieces of information for people to understand. Both of them are equally as important as the other. And one thing I kind of talk about a lot, and I really try to practice myself, is living below your means, which is, like you said, spend less than you make. So like when you get a raise or when you are able to make some extra money, you don't spend it as soon as you get it. You don't buy things that require you to make monthly payments.
Yeah,
And
your freedom will come to the extent that you can do that. Freedom comes when you have a big enough pool of assets to give you an income stream that you can't outlive. That's freedom. That's where that comes from. Absolutely.
Exactly. And me personally, I kind of look at it like a game, like to see how much or how little I can spend every month. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like my biggest goal right now is just to get my monthly expenses as little as possible so I can have as much money to save and invest as humanly possible.
I had a conversation with a client today actually about this topic. She was raised in a family where they always had plenty of money,
Mhm.
right? We work with a lot of clients that they always have plenty of money. And she was like, you know what I think that did to me is I think it reduced my drive to earn, and it reduced my ability to cut expenses, because whatever she asked for when she was a kid, she got it. Like she asked for a new car, new car. You asked for a new dress, new dress. You asked for shoes, shoes. You asked to, a plane ticket to go to Europe. Here's a plane ticket to go to Europe. Whatever you want, you can have, which means you have a really hard time limiting yourself. So as I mentioned, I grew up with none of that stuff. So it's really easy for me to say, you know what, we don't need that. But as I get more and more successful, uh, and what I really want in life, and my kids are 17 and 14, I want them to not experience the challenge of not having that I experienced. But guess what? Giving them the stuff that they want hurts them in a different way. Like it takes away their ability to be independent, to do it themselves. And if I take that away from them, I'm taking something big away from them, right? So you got that balance is important. So I'm commenting on the fact that you're like, my goal at the end of the month is to spend less, spend less, spend less. That's true. That's a great goal, but you also got to live. You got to do things with friends. You got to maintain those relationships, because those will make you really, really happy. So you got to go out for a beer with a friend occasionally. You got to go for a bike ride with a friend occasionally, which means you got to have a bike, right?
Right.
You got to trade offs.
Yes, sir. Exactly. And I think that's a great segue to my next question. Um, you talk a lot about the true sources of happiness.
Mm.
So, why does that matter when you're investing?
Beautiful question. So, I mean, we'll get to there's three sections to my book. The first section of the book really talks about all the stuff that I'll call it the smoke and mirrors, the stuff that we hear about Wall Street, or we hear about risk, or we hear about investing that's just not true, the stuff you can ignore. That's the first section. The second section of the book is all about these pillars of happiness. This is well-being. These are the things that religious pundits, philosophers, and more modern psychology have talked about as the sources of true long-term health, well-being, and happiness. So why does that matter when you think about investing? Well, when you think about the trade-offs you're going to make, we all want a retirement income we can't live. But does that retirement income, does that involve working 60 hours a week instead of 40? Does it involve a 2-hour commute so I can live in a place where so the decisions we make that drive our spending decisions have to be based on what we recognize as the stuff that's going to give our lives meaning and bring happiness into our lives. Otherwise, and here's the downside, if we don't think it through and we just kind of go, yeah, I'm gonna buy fast cars, and I'm gonna travel a lot, and I'm not gonna save a penny. If we don't think it through, we'll be drawn in directions that the world wants us to be drawn in. Like believe me, the marketers know how to move you to spend. The people that are marketing and advertising, they know the colors that will pull you in. They know the sounds of the music that will pull you into buying the stuff that you'll think will make you happy because of the sounds of the music and the colors they're using to advertise, right? They will pull you in. And if you don't have a plan for yourself, they have a plan for you. That plan for yourself should be based on stuff that you know will make you happy. And then you build on top of that and you prioritize based on what you know will make you happy.
Yes, sir. And that's a very great way to put it. Because that's their job. Like these marketers, they know it's their job to know what will move you and get you to purchase something.
That's right.
So, having that plan and having these set goals that you want to hit and these marks and targets that you want to hit is very important to, obtaining financial independence. I read a quote, and it says, a budget tells your money where to go. Like something like if you don't budget, then you'll be asking where your money went instead of knowing where. So something along the lines of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I got it. That's
Yeah,
good.
for
It's a good
sure, for
quote.
sure. Yes, sir. So what would you say is the difference between money or wealth, and mindful money or wealth?
Oh, great question. So we talked just briefly about, and this is, so I have a podcast that's dedicated, the Mindful Wealth podcast is dedicated to this question. And, um, you can make a target, you can make money your target, right? And you might get some money, but there'll always be people that have more money than you. So you'll never quite get there. Um, Mindful money or mindful wealth is wealth that behaves in society, right? What we see, this is what we see when people have money. I have a really close friend of mine who was very left leaning, and he was a technology guy, and he worked really hard and he made some money and he's very left leaning and he was very all supportive of it. Then he started his own business, and what happened to him is he slowly shifted towards the right when he started seeing more taxes going out. He started saying, you know what, this really doesn't make much sense to me. It's not really in my best interest. And I would say that is unfortunate, but it's also not unique. Like, people who start off with the best intentions, they work and strive and try to create something, they build something and they build it and they do it. They work their butts off and they get there. And then they're suddenly more interested in protecting what they've gotten than they are to like leveling the playing field. Like, it's really easy to, once you have, then be more interested in protecting what you have than in sharing that wealth and building up other people. One of the things about grace and one of the things about true wealth is it's not trying to wall itself off. It doesn't then just say, okay, I'm going to build this separate community. I'm going to be apart from, and that's how I'm going to protect myself. It says, you know what? I'm part of this community. Some amount of my success came from being part of this community. So what can I do to help other people in this community actually enjoy some other levels of success as well? And culturally, this whole conversation about taxes that we have every 2 or 3, 4 years drives me nuts. We should figure out what it is we want to accomplish as a group, and we should tax whatever we have to tax to make those things happen. But we don't do that. We pick one strand, and we're going to get angry about this one thing because the people that are defending that one thing are just a special interest now. And there's another thing that they're going to defend this other thing, rather than picking up big picture. What are we trying to accomplish? And having the grace to working together on this kind of stuff. We end up just, sniping at each other, not solving any problems. It drives me nuts. But mindful wealth is mindful of luck, mindful of, I get to where I am because of a mix of what I look like, luck, being in the right place in the right time. Yeah, hard work, that's all in there, but it's not all me. It's not, I didn't invent an industry. I didn't invent an idea. I didn't invent anything. I don't own all of this. So I should be willing to share that. And whether you're a financial advisor or you're a retail or you're a plumber or whatever thing that you've done, you've created success out of. And I've got clients who are painting contractors that are killing it. Like, they're just doing incredibly well. And he's more than happy to share. He's more than happy to say, okay, I'm trying to build up somebody else's painting contracting company because I'm successful. I know how to do this. Let me help somebody else. And so giving back and being part of a community and not walling yourself off, that's mindful money. That's mindful wealth. Recognizing, and this is another Buddhist idea. See if we can pair this out here. It's dependent co-origination. None of us does this by ourselves. We are all interdependent on everyone else. And so if we recognize that interdependence, then it's in my interests to boost everyone else. It's in my interests to boost the culture. It's in my interest to pay my taxes. It's in my interests too. And if we're thinking that, then we don't have to snipe about all this stuff. We say, okay, how do we figure this out? Let's work together.
No, and that's amazing, man. And I really like the philosophy and how you approach money. Um, so it's something that's really interesting to me because personally, I feel like it. I like history, and I like looking at how things, I guess, the order of things. But I think it's important to tell the entire story of it. And when I say that, I mean, like, talk about financial literacy. That's the very beginning of it. So you talk about financial literacy, then you talk about ownership, and how to accumulate the wealth. And then I feel like another important piece of the story, which I guess is maybe not emphasized as much, is what to do once you have the money. Like once you've amassed or accumulated the wealth, how do you act with it? And that's like a part and a piece that I feel like is untapped and people aren't really talking about. Once you get the money, now what? Because we're all talking about how to get it, accumulate it, how to do it. But once you have it, how should you act with it? And
Yep.
I feel like your company and what you're saying kind of speaks to that, you know?
Yep. I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's we need to have more mindful wealth, and wealth that doesn't separate itself from everyone else. And that's, how do we get there? I don't know. We keep speaking to it. Like that's all we can do.
Exactly. Yes, sir. And I guess an important thing that I noticed, or something that I feel like is um, a key piece to any business, is setting up these different streams of income. Setting up the passive income from your courses to your books to maybe, I know you say you don't really charge for public speaking engagements, but that could be a different source of income. So what would you say is the importance of having multiple streams of income for you?
So while I have all of those things, and I have, I guess, the potential for multiple streams of income, I've only ever really had a single source of income. That's not true. I've owned real estate, so I guess I've had two sources of income. Income from real estate and income from my business, which is the fees that my clients pay me to do what they do, what we do with them. So I have sold a course. I've sold, I think, about 10,000 copies of the book. But really 99.9% of all of my income comes from my business, which is the personal financial planning world, and the education and the financial planning and the investment management that we do. I am interested in developing more public speaking, and spreading that message and having greater impact, which probably means getting paid for public speaking some. I'm interested in that. Have I done it? Only a small amount. I've spoken a couple places where they've, bulk purchased a bunch of books and they'll give me a $500 stipend, that kind of thing. I see people out there that are doing public speaking all the time, and there's, $5,000 here, $10,000 here. Is that interesting? Sure, of course it's interesting. Of course it's interesting, right? Would I like to sell more courses? Sure, it's great. It's very interesting to me. It's less interesting to me to put a gate on the courses to keep people from them, because I think that I can do a lot more good. And if you just think about it from the idea that we talked about the funnel, right? If I'm just giving it away and people are learning and they're benefiting from it, and I can help a lot of people that way and never make a penny, okay, that's fine. But I know that that's not how the world works. I know that if I give it away and a lot of people take it and a lot of people do it, and 1 out of 500 go, you know what, this is great. This is the lesson that actually launched me and helped me out, and I understood it, and no one's ever spoke to me like this. And I really appreciate what Jonathan said. That person is going to call me and say, Jonathan, I've started saving. I've put enough away. I'm at this point. Can you help me get to the next level? That's what's going to happen. And I know that's going to happen. So I have faith that that's going to happen. There's still a price tag on the courses, right? So people come and want to take it. That's fine. They can take it. Anyone can take it that way. But I tell you what, anyone that's listening, here's the secret. You go to your church, you go to your youth group, you go to a group of adults that have a membership with them, and you talk to that person and have them reach out to us. And I will give the course to them so that they can give it to you. The issue is one of just capacity. I can't create, one login for everyone and answer everyone's tech support questions and then support it all, because I don't have enough people that are working in the office to manage it all. But for groups, we give it away 99% of the time. It's given away. So I understand the multiple income thing, multiple streams of revenue thing. I think that if you really want to go deep in one thing, which is what I've done, I think you can be incredibly successful that way. And if you really understand it and are providing real value, doing one thing really, really, really well can be very lucrative. It can also be very meaningful in your life. It can pay you back in lots of different ways, even more than getting distracted with lots of different things. And I know that that's kind of against the FIRE movement. The FIRE movement is multiple streams of income, and I get that. But I think that if you're going to build something, building one thing is easier than building five things.
For sure. And it sounds like you understand the importance of multiple streams of income, but it sounds like you understand even more the importance of good karma and putting out that energy and getting and giving out what you wish to receive back. So
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing thing. And in the world of finance, I guess that's like a breath of fresh air because everybody is like, how can we increase profit margin? We want as much money as possible. But you're just like operating from a standpoint of, hey, what I put out, I have faith and I believe that I'll get back what I put out to my community and to the people that I help.
So honestly, that's true, and I appreciate your acknowledging that. It wasn't always that way, even for me. Like there was a time when I was nervous and I didn't know that I'd had enough, and I was working hard just to build it up. But there's a point where, and I'm still talking to my parents about this. I'm still talking to other people about this. There's a point where you shift from you growing up the way I grew up. I will never completely get rid of that sense of lack of security. I will always be afraid that someone will take it away or something will happen. And I'm more aware of that now than I've ever been because of losing my brother. Like I see what's happened to his family. And so I see that, you know what, it can be taken away. There's no question about it. It can be taken away. So I know that there's that fear. But over time, with success, with business growth, with really understanding how it all works, with further development, with further conversations, you worry a little bit less. And it's more like that. It's that worry in the back of your mind. It's not front and center anymore. It's there, but you're also smart, and you also go, you know what, I'm going to be fine. Like I trust my own ability to manage through whatever situation gets handed my way. And developing that trust took time. The fear is still there, but now it's a managed fear. I'm less worried than I once was. And so I know that there's people out there that are worried, and that makes sense. If you're worried, that's, I think, normal. I think that's a normal status. Life is freaking hard. Getting there is hard. You got to take the steps. You got to go through the worry. You got to do the work. And on the other end, guess what? You still have a little bit of worry, but you trust your ability to manage through the worry. And that's the gift. That's the benefit of getting there.
For sure. Yes, sir. And I think that's a great way to look at it, because if you care about what you do and if you care about something, I think it's only natural to worry about it or to have some level of fear about it if you care about it.
Yeah.
But you've been in this industry for close to 2 decades, and you mentioned that you talk to your parents and you talk to your friends and you just talk to different people about your ideas and things of that nature. So, what would you say is the importance of having a good team around you? And, how did you focus on building your team?
Now, so there was this was probably 1990, sorry, 2006, 5 or 6. There was a coaching program I wanted to be in. And I want to be part of this coaching program, but one of the costs of entry into the coaching program is you had to have one employee. You had to have somebody that you could take things off of your desk and give to them to do. And as part of this coaching program, they were going to point out, these are the things you should take off your desk and give to somebody else. And so that was my first foray into building a team. And what I learned was I'm not very good at it. I'm not very good at managing people. I'm not very good at being a visionary leader. This is not my strong suit. I'm really good at sitting face to face with a client and helping them, overcome financial issues and figure out the path forward. That I'm really good at. Managing a team is not my strong suit. So over the years, I hired a few really key people that helped hire more people and help manage more people. And I've, through coaching, I've learned systems and processes and ways to deal with HR and answer those questions and deal with some of those things. And now there's 8 of us, and I have a fantastic team. I have a group of 4 advisors and 2 planners and 2 support staff that are, first rate. Really good people They all know their business. They all know their jobs. They're really, really smart. And that is frankly has nothing to do with my ability to build a team. It is just good people that have come together. I think John is probably more important than I am in that regard. I think Gail is more important than I am in that regard. Nancy before John and Gail was more important in that regard than I am. Finding good people, making sure there's the right people in the right seats, and then giving them what they need and talking to them and asking them how they're doing and all that kind of stuff is really important. Not my strong suit, honestly.
No, and I think that's like the beauty of it. I think that's one of the most important things in business is to understand your strengths and your weaknesses so you can know how to use both to your advantage. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like even though we identify something as a weakness, if we can identify it, that gives us the ability to turn it into a strength. So by understanding, where we're strong at and where we lack at, that gives us the chance to bring on the right people to help us and to help expand and grow our business and elevate what we're doing. So I think that's amazing just to be able to, decipher what we're best at and what we're maybe not the best at.
Yeah. And always be willing to be a little lucky.
Exactly.
Always be willing to be lucky.
Yes, sir, for sure, for sure. So, we mentioned earlier, you've been in the business for, nearly 2 decades. So, can you recall any specific, I guess, business mistakes or business lessons that you've learned that you could maybe pass down to the next person to help avoid those same mistakes or those same lessons?
Yeah, and this is I shouldn't have had to learn this lesson, but I have learned this lesson probably more than once. And this is where stop predicting comes from.
Mhm.
If you spend any time at all, so when I started in 1996, so it's actually more like 25 years. So it's 1996. I was trained to pitch stock. I was trained to call somebody up cold and sell them a blue chip tech stock, Cisco Systems, Microsoft, whatever. That doesn't mean I had any special knowledge about the company. It doesn't mean I knew what their next earnings report was going to say. I was taught to pitch a stock. And when someone said no to that pitch, then I was taught to say, well, or ask questions, if it's not this stock, you want to be more aggressive, less aggressive. You want fixed income instead of this? So it's a sales program, right? But in that process, what I was doing was enhancing this idea that picking a stock is the right thing to do. That picking an individual equity, predicting how this equity was going to do relative to other equities, or this investment, or this fund, or this ETF, or this geography, emerging markets versus the United States, or this asset class, or small versus large, or there's so much prediction. And I keep going through this thought in my head that I think that I wonder, I'm not there yet, but I wonder if the smartest thing we can do in terms of building a portfolio that we don't have to operate, that we don't have to think about, is to buy, a global all cap, cap weighted or maybe factor weighted index. And that's it. Like, don't overthink this. Stop predicting. What predicting, and you have to recognize there's tons of psychology in this. When you predict, you can't actually know. You can never know. You're predicting because you're swimming in a soup of people that are predicting. You're predicting because everyone else is predicting. They're not right either. And you fast forward from any set of big predictions 5 years, you look back and you go, yeah, some people got it right, some people got it wrong. Every 5 years, it's a different set of people on both ends of the curve, right? There is no predictable outcome when it comes to finance. The next thing that's going to happen is unknown and unknowable. So if there was one thing that I wish I would have understood earlier on, as a kid growing up in this business for the first few years, is that prediction is impossible. It doesn't matter that 98% of all of the stuff we read about is prediction. It doesn't matter that that's what all the pundits talk about. It doesn't matter that that's what the economists talk about. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. Prediction is impossible. There is no crystal ball. You cannot know what's coming down the pipe. So you don't have to think about, if you understand that, it's just freeing. You don't have to think about which asset class. You don't have to think about small versus large. You don't have to think about, tech versus banks. You don't have to think, you own all of it all the time and you rebalance. Own all of it all the time, rebalance. It's the simplest, it's idiot proof. You're going to be fine in the long run. You're going to be just as good as anyone else is in the long run. You can't predict either way. Why not just make it easy on yourself and focus on things like earning more, spending time with your family, taking that walk in the woods, reading that book, writing the next thing that you want to write, do your art, focus on the things you love and you want to do. Don't put so much energy and attention into this stuff. It doesn't help you in any way. Stop predicting.
No, and I think that's a great piece of advice, man. And I guess I have a couple points to say about that. Like, I have a few different portfolios, and some where I individually pick my stocks, and then some where I just invested in the ETFs. And when you handpick the stocks, I guess it's an ego thing. Like, it's kind of fun, it's kind of exciting, and you get to like stroke your ego and say, all right, I picked the good one, I picked the winner this time. But predicting causes anxiety, like a form of anxiety. But when you just get to sit back and just like, all right, I know I'm putting my money into this ETF, or I'm putting my money into this mutual fund, whatever it is, it gives you that sense of like relaxation. Like, just you can breathe a little bit easier, like not having to focus solely on like this stock, make sure it's performing the best, like, I guess validating if you're smart or not, or if you're a good predictor or whatever.
That's right. And whether it's individual stocks or, and this is all the rage now, we could go into a whole rabbit hole on this, I'm sure, because I know that you're experienced with this as well. What about crypto or
Exactly.
NFTs or whatever the hype is of the day? And
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time. Like, I don't disagree with crypto. I don't think crypto is stupid. I just think that if you harness the power of global businesses, they will use crypto to their advantage. Just own the business. They will figure out how to use crypto. You don't have to figure out how to use crypto. Or in 1997, you didn't have to own, an internet company. You could own a banking company. Guess what? The banking companies use the internet. Like, you don't have to think this stuff through. You have to just be broadly diversified, and all the advantages will accrue to you.
Exactly. And I'm speaking of NFTs, I'm driving myself crazy right now trying to pick the right NFTs to see if I can find that right lottery ticket. But yeah, that's another story for another day. Um,
As long
but
as you're looking at it as a lottery ticket, as long as you recognize it's a lottery ticket, that's fine.
yes, sir, for sure, for sure. So, what would you say is your favorite part, or your favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur?
Well, so the thing I like doing the most is I like talking about our, well, it goes back to the phenomenology. I like talking about how people experience the world and translate that experience into decisions. So in entrepreneurship, it is things like, how does somebody figure out what other people might want and provide that thing for them in a way that is transformational. And when we talk about that internally, anyone can go and buy a mutual fund at Vanguard or an ETF and iShares, and that's fine. And people do that all the time, and more power to them. Don't want to take that away from anybody. What I'm really wanting to do is I want to give people two things. I want to give them an experience that is better, that is more aware of who they are, what they want to accomplish in their lives, and I want to transform the anxiety around money. And the experience and the transformation, I think, for me, are key to an entrepreneur that is service-based, like I am. If I was developing a technology, I'd be a different thing. Like it would be a scale issue. For me, it's one-on-one with clients. And so the thing I have to create, or the thing I have to produce, is something that's transformational. It's something that it improves their lives outside of return on asset or return on investment. I have to provide the return on asset, return on investment at the same time, but that's not enough. I have to change their lives. I have to bring them to a better place, psychologically, emotionally, personally, help them focus on the stuff that really matters, which means help them identify the stuff that really matters so that they can focus on it and take this other stuff off their plate. That's what I love about doing what I do. And I think that applies in almost any service-based business. And so we work with attorneys, we work with CPAs, I work with a lot of, contractors, and really we all do different things, but we're all in a service business. We're all taking care of clients' needs. And I love that. I love, because that's just it's a community thing. It's we're doing this together. How do we do this together so that we all end up in a better place? I just think that's the way most things should work. I don't want to drag anyone through the mud, but one of my problems with someone like Amazon is that I hope they're not advertisers on your show, is because they win, but they win at someone else's expense. They provide enormous benefits. Like, it's enormous benefit for us to be able to order something that we get tomorrow, 12 hours later. That's impressive. That's amazing, right? It's a huge benefit. And they do that at the expense of local. They do that at the expense of the people they put out of business. They do that at the expense of the workers that don't get paid enough, that don't get bathroom breaks, that they do that at the expense of somebody else. The market will bear it. The market bears it. Does it make it right? No. But in a service business, you can't hide in that. You can't do that. You're part of a community. It's visible. It's all there. Transformational. I love that about local, small, independent, working together businesses.
For sure. No, and I agree with that 1000%, because it's, being in the financial services industry, like we mentioned earlier, it's all numbers, it's all analytical. Everybody's looking for returns. But I just feel like if you could find a way to humanize the business, to bring that human experience to it, that's what uh, helps hook people into your business, and keeps them there for long term. And like it brings that loyalty to it just by humanizing it and making it a little different than just returns.
Well, if you're ever looking and you're moving to the Bay Area, just let us know.
Yes, sir, for sure. So, what would you say is the single most important reason for your success?
this will come as a bit of a surprise, I think, but I was too stupid to fail. Like, I should have quit. I should have quit many, many times, and I never did. And I just, I had so many peers, so many really close friends that stopped in 1997, 1998, 2000 came along, .com collapsed. So many people left the business, and I just kept plugging along and kept plugging along. And it took, oh my God, it was probably 15 years in when I finally was like, okay, I have a base. I have something I can rely on. And then it took probably 5 additional years. So this is just 5 years ago now, where I was like, okay, I feel good. Like I trust, that sense of security started showing up. But for 20 years, it was literally, I was too stupid to fail. I was too stupid to quit and to get out. I should have so many times. Like, first 7 years, I hated the industry, hated everything about it, hated cold calling, hated sales, hated bugging people, hated getting told no, hated the whole thing. I hated Wall Street. I hated other brokers in my office, just hated it all. And I should have quit. And I never did, because I had the occasional mentor that was like, you know what, do it your way. Do it your way. Don't do it their way. Think this through. Yeah. Do it your way. And that was critical. I never would have survived if I didn't have those people.
For sure. And I think that's like the dopest thing, is just figuring out to do it your own way, like to put your own spin on it, to personalize it, do it how you think is cool.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what gives you that longevity, just by being able to do it your way and not having to follow somebody else's footsteps or guidelines, or however you want to put it,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's beautiful. And that's, one of the issues in the industry is there's a serious lack of mentors for all different kinds of people. It's easy for me to find a mentor. If you're a woman in the industry, very hard. If you're a person of color in the industry, even harder. If you're, if you're a 25-year-old white guy, there's all kinds of people out there. And how do we create that diversity? I think we have to talk to that, so that everyone has access to a mentor that they are comfortable with, not just somebody else that might be willing to do it, but the whole industry needs to be much more diverse than it is.
For sure. So how would you like for people to remember you and your company?
I'd like people to understand and remember us as somebody that transformed how we talk about money, and how and reduces anxiety around money. Provide the education, reduce the anxiety. It's the transformational aspects, both in terms of their lives and the industry itself. Like I'm on a mission to change how we talk about money together.
What does the future of mindful money look like to you?
More content. I'm working on my next book right now. More writing, more blogging. Another podcast, the Mindful Wealth podcast, is just kind of taken off. We've only got I think we've got 11 episodes live. But I'm going to do another podcast that's going to be talking to advisors about circles of competence and talking to individuals about what they want from advisors. And so that whole thing, pointing to the differences. This is what we think we're really good at. This is what we think we need, and seeing how we can sort of bridge that gap between people that want advice and the people that offer advice. And so that they can communicate to each other a little bit better than they do right now.
Jonathan, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a very interesting conversation, and I've definitely learned a lot. But before we go, at the end of every episode, we like to play a rapid fire question game where I ask you 3 questions. So if you're willing to play, I'll go ahead and ask.
I'm willing to play. I don't know what the questions are, but let's do this.
Yes, sir. So question number 1, where's your favorite place to travel?
Wow. So I'd say there's kind of 2 answers to this. I love going to Europe. That's the big, I love actually going to France. That's one of my favorite things in the world. That's where my honeymoon was. It's great, but I don't go very often. So the place I love to go, that I go to on a regular basis, is just Tahoe. Is it the mountains around Lake Tahoe? I love the mountains. I love rocky cliffs. I love forests. I'm not a huge lake person, but I love the mountains. So anywhere in the mountains, I'm excited.
Tahoe is beautiful. If you ever get a chance, or if you've already been there, you got to check out a place called Heavenly Village in Lake Tahoe. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've been there. You bet.
It's amazing. Yes, sir. Question number 2. What song explains your life the most?
Wow. What song explains my life the most? There's too many. There's too many songs. I couldn't name one. Is there a song that's a song that's entirely focused on grace? That would be the song. And I don't know what song that would be, but I think that I started off with a lot of struggle, but I've been really lucky. And that's just, it's just been grace.
That's awesome. Look, in the final question, what's an amazing thing that you did that no one was around to see?
I mean, there's little examples of this kind of stuff that happen all the time. Meals for people, those kinds of things. But I just went through this, and what I learned, another thing I learned, many things I've learned when my brother died, was when people tell us that they lose someone that's important to them, we don't know how to behave. We don't know how to respond to that. That is something that it's just like we don't teach anything about money. We don't teach anything about helping people through grief either. And so I remember when a client of mine lost someone that was really important to them, and they told me, and I remember how I responded to that. And then I lost my brother, and I went back to her, and I was just like, I'm sorry. Like I had no idea what it was like. I have no context for the comments that I made. I'm sure I said nice things. I'm sure that I wasn't hurtful in any way, but I had no idea what to say. And I called her up and said, I just want you to know that I had no idea. And I know I kind of have an idea now. And I wish I would have said this and this and this and this and this. And she calls me up like a few days later after we have that little conversation, and we just by taking the time, admitting your mistakes, and coming clean with it, you build a bridge to another human. And she knows about it, but other people don't know about that. And taking that time to do that is actually, there's nothing more valuable to you personally than building those bridges between humans, which you really have to just be totally vulnerable to where you screw up, things you do wrong. And the more vulnerable you can be and the more open you can be, the more of those bridges you build, and the closer you're going to be to other people. And that, whether you have money or not, that will be the life well lived.
Man, that's amazing, Jonathan. Thank you so much for your time today. And I've definitely learned a lot. And like I said, man, this has been one of my favorite interviews and most interesting. And, you really found a way to make money and financial services interesting and give it a different spin and a different light than
Thank you.
just talking about returns. So I really appreciate what you're doing in the industry.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, sir.